Hi, this is Craig Stocks here for Utah Desert Remote Observatories. You can find us online at utahdesertremote.com, and we could be your source for imaging rentals by the hour if you'd like to rent time on one of our systems. We also, beginning this summer, will have peers available in our observatory, so you can rent a location for your own remote imaging setup, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that. But in the meantime, I posted a picture the other day of the Ophiuchi area, and there were some questions about how I did the color and also how I added the hydrogen alpha data, and then how I assembled the mosaic, because this is actually a 3-panel mosaic photographed with a monochrome camera using red, green, and blue filters. So a lot of data was collected. And so I thought the easiest way to do that would be to just walk through how I put this together. First of all, I started the process in Voyager, where I set up the mosaic using the tool there. And this is 3 panels. So right now in this view, it's rotated 90 degrees. So the one panel is here, one panel is in the middle, and then the third panel would be on the left-hand side, including the Antares star. So those 3 panels all overlap. In each panel, I photographed red, green, blue, and hydrogen alpha. So there's a lot of files and a lot of calibration and integration that has to go on. So I did that using PixInsight, and let's just take a look at how I have that set up. So if we look at this is the weighted batch preprocessing script, or WBPP, and it's set up kind of as you would expect. I have a bias master, I have dark masters for the 600-second exposures for hydrogen and 180-second exposures for the red, green, and blue. I have flats for red, green, blue, and hydrogen. And then the lights, I have a whole bunch of blue, green, hydrogen, and red. And if you look at the details here, you would see that, for instance, if we look at the red, the file name includes the keyword pane. So here's pane 1, pane 2, and then pane 3. So I have red, green, and blue times pane 1, pane 2, pane 3. And what I want to do when I calibrate all of this and integrate it, I would like all of the pane 1 to be aligned, all of the pane 2 to be aligned, and all of the pane 3 to be aligned. And the way PixInsight lets you do that is with the keyword grouping over here. If I add the keyword pane, it will look for the word pane and then take the next thing that comes after that as its value. So if I add the word pane and click the plus sign to add that, and you can see it added the word pane, but it's showing the check mark in the pre-processor, and I really want it in the post-processing, because I don't need to process pane 1, pane 2, and pane 3 separately for calibration, but for integration I do. So I click the little tool here, and that will change the highlight from pre to post. And then the last thing I want to do, if we look at the post calibration, we can see that we've got all the red, green, and blue here, but I really want it to be grouped by pane. And what that's going to do, now I have red, green, and blue for pane 1, pane 2, pane 3, pane 1, pane 2, pane 3. So the end result is going to be actually 12 files, 3 for red, 3 for green, 3 for blue, and 3 for hydrogen. And then I can take all of those, process them through my usual process of dynamic background extraction in PixInsight, and then most of the time it seems like I have pretty good luck just applying a screen stretch or a screen transfer function, and then applying that with a histogram transformation to create a stretched kind of uniform with the gradients removed, and I do that 12 times, one for each of the resulting files that comes out of this. And at that point then I'm ready to go to Photoshop. So let's switch over to Photoshop, because this is really where the assembly happens. And what I'll do in Photoshop is I want to open all of the files. So I'll go to File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack. And if you've watched any of my videos, you've seen this before. This is basically a script that lets you load individual files so that each file is on its own layer. And I can just navigate now to the D drive where I have the PixInsight swap files, and go to Master. And here are my red, green, and blue, and hydrogen. I also shot some luminosity, but they didn't seem to add anything, so I'm just going to skip them for the time being. So this gives me blue, pane 1, pane 2, pane 3, green, red, and then hydrogen. Click OK to select those files. And then apparently I didn't click OK. Let's try it again. Click Open. Well, as they say, the word demonstration comes from a Greek word that means fails before large audiences. And I'm not sure why this isn't loading these files. Oh, duh. It's not loading them because these are FITS files, and I have to go find TIFF files. When I process these in PixInsight, I save them as TIFF files, and I actually save them in a different directory. So let's go look in the right spot rather than the wrong spot. And there are my TIFF files. So let's just pick just the TIFF files. So hydrogen, blue, green, red. So there are the files that I need, and these are in fact the TIFF files that I save. And I save these as 16-bit TIFFs. I used to save them as 32-bit TIFF files, but then generally the first thing I had to do in Photoshop was convert them to 16-bit, and it's easier to just load them as 16-bit to start with and avoid having to go through that translation. So what Photoshop is doing now, it's going to go through all 12 of these files, and each one of these is a 62 megapixel file. So this will create a fairly large file when I'm done. In my approach, I don't like to flatten files, probably because I tend to work quickly and then get to the end and then go back and refine and then go back and refine. And as I do that, I constantly finding things that I overlooked the first time around. And for me, it's easier to just keep all of those layers intact so that after I get all done and then see something that I didn't do as well as I should have in the blending, or if I want to adjust a levels somewhere, I have all of the source data all still live so that I can go back and adjust anything from the very beginning. So all 12 of these files that I'm loading will continue to live in this master file, at least, as individual layers. Now the first thing I'll need to do once these all get loaded is do a little bit of housekeeping, because what I really want to do is put these together into logical groups. So all the hydrogen together, all the red, all the green, all the blue, pane 1, pane 2, pane 3, and so forth. And because there's red, green, and blue and multiple panes, you've got a little bit of freedom in how you decide you want to organize things. I'm going to start by putting the hydrogen all together and getting it out of the way. You will notice, by the way, that part of what I'm loading here is also a set of starless hydrogen. when I actually add the hydrogen, I will be adding it from a starless layer rather than from the star layer. But I'm loading both so that I can use the starred layer of hydrogen to align with the red, green, and blue. So let me expand this a little bit so we can see the file names a little bit better. Don't need to expand that, I just need to expand this. So let's start off. Here's our hydrogen, pane 1, pane 2, pane 3. And we know we're going to have to move the panes around. So I'm just going to group pane 3 together. And we'll just do a little bit of quick housekeeping. I'm just using Control G to put the two highlighted layers into a group. So this was pane 2. So there's pane 1, pane 2, and pane 3 of the hydrogen. I'm going to put those three groups into a group, label it hydrogen, and then I'm just going to turn this off for now so that it's not distracting us. Now we have red, green, and blue, pane 1, 2, and 3. So again, I want to put all of my pane 1 together, and I have red down here on the bottom for pane 1. Here's red pane 2. Let's just bring it down on top. And here's red pane 3. So I can put these together as red, as the three reds in one pane, but it's probably going to work better to keep the panes together rather than the colors together. So let's change courses. Here we have pane 1 red, here's pane 1 green, and here's pane 1 blue. So now these three are all pane 1, red, green, and blue. I'll just Control G, and this is pane 1. Now I'll do the same thing for pane 2. Here's pane 2 red, pane 2 green, pane 2 blue. So Control G, and this is pane 2. And then the last one, red, green, and blue, is pane 3. Now, I know this whole image is kind of upside down from the way we normally look at it. And so I'm just going to real quickly do an image rotation and rotate it 180 degrees. And the last thing I need to do, these were all loaded as grayscale images. So if I look at image mode, you'll see that these are grayscale. And I really need this to be RGB color in order to add color. So I'm going to go ahead and click on RGB color, and I don't want to merge these layers, so I'm going to click Don't Merge. And what Photoshop is going to do is create the three layers that we need for color, red, green, and blue, that go along with each one of the layers. So each layer now actually has all three colors, red, green, and blue. It's just that they're all equal. So now we need to arrange these layers, and I know we're going to need to make the canvas larger, so let's just go ahead and expand it. And I'm going to use layer 2 as, well, let's use layer 3 as our kind of our reference to start with. It doesn't really matter because all three are going to have to be aligned with each other, and where they overlap is on layer 2. So the crop is done. Let's grab pane 3, and I'm going to just tap V for the move tool, and I can move this group now, and everything in the group will move together. So there's pane 3, and we can see a little bit of how it's organized, where it belongs, somewhere up here. And what I want to do in order to really see where it goes, I'm going to put this group in Lighten blending mode. And you'll find I use these blending modes quite a bit, because what Lighten lets me do is kind of look through pane 3 and see pane 2 underneath. And you can see now when I move the stars over on the right hand side, and we'll zoom in a little bit, I can align them so that those are pretty well aligned right here now, but there's a little bit of a rotation, so we need to do a free transform. So Control T, and I can, again, I'm putting this whole group, layer group, into free transform. And in free transform, you have a reference that's usually in the center, but I can move that over here where I have this aligned. And now, for instance, when I move my cursor over to the left and move up and down, I'm rotating about an axis of rotation where I'm aligned over here. So I will zoom in, make sure I'm well aligned. I'm just moving the whole layer over here to get well aligned. And if you really want to get aligned carefully, you can use, instead of Lighten mode, you can use the Difference blending mode. And what that will do is really highlight how the stars are aligned. So these are aligned pretty well over here. I'll zoom out, zoom back in on this side, and we can see that we need to adjust to the rotation a little bit. So I can just click and drag, and I'm rotating about that center of rotation over on the other side where everything is aligned, and that's where we put that reference point. So I'll just move this down. System's just a little bit laggy as it catches up, so there it's pretty well aligned. So now we have pane 3 aligned with pane 2. I'll click the check mark to confirm that this is what I want. And then I'll change this from Lighten, excuse me, black back to normal. Actually, it was on Difference, back to normal blending mode. And now we have pane 1 and 2 aligned with, we can see a little bit of an overlap line here. We'll deal with that with a mask in a few minutes. Let's turn off the top pane 3, and let's put pane 2 in Lighten blending mode. But now I want to actually move the bottom, which is pane 1. So V for the move tool. This one's pretty easy because of the globular cluster here. We can see right where that goes. And we'll just do the same thing. I'll zoom in and align the stars over on the right hand side. Control T for free transform. Move the center reference over to here. Now we'll pan over and look at the left hand side, where we'll need to adjust the rotation. Zoom in just a little bit. And you can be as careful and cautious as you feel you need to be. This is something that you really only do once, so it pays to spend a little bit of time and get it as close as you can. In this case, our scale is correct. If we found that there was some scale differences from focus changing the focal length of the telescope, if you hold the Shift and Alternate key and then grab one of these corners, you can resize the whole frame, again, relative to that anchor point. So I'll click OK. And this is completing the free transform. And at this point now we have basically aligned all of our 3 panes, and because each one of those panes includes the red, green, and blue, we have aligned the red, green, and blue for each one. And if we want to clean up the interface a little bit, what I'll do is just add a layer mask with this, looks like a front-loading washer, the rectangle with a white circle. That adds a layer mask. I can now grab the brush tool by tapping B, and D will give me my default colors of white and black. X will switch white and black, so black is the foreground color. And now I can just paint with black on this mask, and that will blend If I go too far, I can always switch to white and paint it back in. So now we've blended pane 1 and pane 2. And let's do the same thing down here between panes 2 and 3. Again, I'll add a layer mask, grab the brush tool, and just paint with black to blend that transition from pane 2 to pane 3. And it's that easy. We now have red, green, and blue, panes 1, 2, and 3. It's time to make this in color. And remember I mentioned earlier that we have the 3 layers here. Let's start with pane 3. And each one of these layers, even though this is the red data, this is the green data, this is the blue data, each layer contains all 3 colors. It's just that all 3 are equal. But if we start with, for instance, the blue layer, we really only want the blue from this layer. We don't want red and green. So if I double click out here to the right of the layer name, that will bring up the Advanced Blending Options dialog, and you can see in the center we have channels, red, green, and blue, with each one with a check mark. I'll just uncheck red and green because we don't need red and green from the blue layer. Click OK. Now I'll go to the green layer, double click to bring up the Advanced Blending Options, and again, as you might guess, now we don't need red or blue, we just want green from this layer. And now layer 3 is in color, and we don't really need to do anything with the one on the bottom because all we're using from it is the red. We're replacing the green with the green layer and replacing the blue with the blue layer. Let's collapse this layer group because we're essentially done with it for now. We'll go to pane 2 and we'll do the same thing. We'll go to the blue layer, turn off red and green, leaving only blue. And notice that one of the beauties of working in layers is what happens in the layer group stays in the layer group. So as I play with these within the layer group, those effects only take effect within that layer group. So now we have pane 2 in full color. Let's go to pane 1, and we'll just do the same thing real quickly. We'll go to the blue layer, turn off red and green. Sometimes it takes it a minute to come up. Go to the green layer. We'll turn off red and blue. And now we have a 3-pane mosaic, full color, red, green, and blue, captured with a monochrome camera. Now if I want to do some global adjustments, I can come up here to the pane 3 layer group, and for instance if I add a levels adjustment, this can confuse you a little bit if the layer group is closed. which this is right now, then when I add this adjustment layer, it will add on top of the selected layer. If the layer group was open and expanded like this, when I add a layer, an adjustment layer, it would actually add inside the group rather than on top of the group. So if that happens to you, if you add an adjustment layer when the layer group is open, you'll see it added that group inside, that adjustment layer, I should say, inside the group rather than on top, which is really what we want. We want, the way things work with layers is anything on top of the layers will affect everything below it. So we have all of these red, green, and blue, pane 1, 2, and 3, and this levels adjustment is on top of those. So any adjustments I make here, for instance, if I darken the dark slider and brighten the midtones, that will affect everything that we see below it and nothing above it. If we want to increase the saturation, we can add a hue saturation adjustment layer and boost up the saturation a little bit. Zoom in a little. If we want to change the color balance, we can add a color balance adjustment layer and experiment with different color balances, however we might want to adjust that. So that's how you put together the mosaic. The last thing that we might want to do is add the hydrogen. And basically I would do it the same way. We have the hydrogen in pane 1, 2, and 3. And we have both a starless and a starred layer. And it's really we need the starred layer to be visible. And the starless is on top. So I'm just going to turn off that starless layer so we can see the stars. Do the same thing in each one of these. So now we can see the stars in our hydrogen data, and we'll just do the same thing as far as moving these to align with what's below. So let's start with pane 3. I'm going to put it just quickly in Lighten blending mode, and then tap V for the move tool, move it up to get it aligned with the stars that we can see below. Start in one corner, Control T, move our reference point over there, and now I can go clear to the opposite corner. And this actually looks like an instance where there might be a difference in, maybe not. I was thinking there might be a difference. Yeah, there is a little bit of a difference in scale here. So I have the hydrogen anchored up here. I will just hold the Shift and alternate keys to constrain movement so that it expands in and out around the center of rotation, or that central axis, and then get things aligned. I'll call that good enough. For some reason this is not wanting to align real nicely. Sometimes it's a little bit of an iterative process. I'll say OK. Because when the dust settles on this, I'm going to turn off the stars. So having the stars a little bit misaligned, even though it looks sloppy here, really won't be a problem. So let's turn off layer 3, or pane 3, and I'll put this in normal blending mode before I forget about it. We can do the same thing with pane. Let's do pane 1 next. Put it in Lighten blending mode. and we need to move it down like this. And we'll just do the same thing. We'll align one corner, Control T, move our anchor point, and then get the rotation correct. Click OK. It's doing the free transform now. So I say as the files get larger and larger, they get a little bit more bloated. This will wind up being a really large file, but I don't really care that much about file space. I figure the file space is inexpensive these days. So let's just finish up with Pane 2 real quick. We'll go to Lighten blending mode. Get it in position down here. Control T for free transform. Grab the axis of rotation. Get the rotation correct. And click OK. So now we have our 3 hydrogen panes, and let's just very quickly add a layer mask and grab the brush tool and blend these together a little bit better. Added a layer mask to Pane 2. Blend that edge. So there's our hydrogen data. Now let's turn the starless layers back on. And the last thing I want to do is I really want to just pick up some of the kind of the color and the texture from the hydrogen without completely overwhelming things. So I'm going to do 2 things with the hydrogen group. And let's just collapse this. First, I want to put this in Lighten blending mode. So we're only going to use the hydrogen where it's brighter than what's below. And then the second thing I want to do, what do we do? Looks like our Pane 1 isn't in the hydrogen group. There we go. And then the second thing I want to do is pick up just the red channel from hydrogen. So again, we'll turn off the channels we don't want, which in this case are green and blue. And now what we're doing is we're adding hydrogen anywhere it's brighter than what's below. It shows up. This Pane 1 still doesn't look like it's positioned quite right. Need it to be in the hydrogen, there we go, in the hydrogen group, but not in the Pane 2 group. So if that seems too strong, we can add a levels adjustment layer, and this is above Pane 3 within the hydrogen group. So it's going to affect only the hydrogen. So if I darken the darks, that'll be taking some of the hydrogen away from the dark areas, or I can brighten the midtones to bring it out more. And basically you can just play with it to find what you think is the right balance between the hydrogen and what's below. You can also experiment with the opacity of that whole group. We can turn it down. I'm just using the scrubby slider on the opacity here to when you click on the word, most places in Photoshop, you'll get what's called a scrubby slider. And you can just click and drag over the word to adjust a drop down like opacity. So that's kind of an ending point. I would probably reduce stars and do some more processing, but that's the basics of how I put together the 3 panels of red, green, and blue, and then added the hydrogen from 3 panels to get a full 3-panel HA-RGB image. I hope you found this interesting. It was a lot of steps and a lot of repetition, but it's really pretty straightforward. I'm just using the Lighten and difference blending modes to align the layers in Photoshop. I'm using layer groups to keep things organized. And then I'm using that advanced blending options in order to turn on and off the appropriate color channels so that I get red, green, and blue. And then the last thing I did was add hydrogen using starless versions of the hydrogen, and I added just the red channel and in Lighten blending mode so that the hydrogen kind of shines through and shows up just where there's hydrogen and not everywhere else. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'll be happy to try to answer whatever questions I can. Be sure to check us out online at utahdesertremote.com. And I hope you have a great day today and an even better night tonight under a clear, dark sky. Thanks.